to everybody here. And thank you for joining us. Want to say it's a big deal. Thank you for making climate change a priority for you. We know you could have spent these few hours doing something else, and it's awesome that you made this decision. My name is Eli Gerfinkel. I'll be the facilitator of today's workshop. I'm a member of a Temple Bet Emeth Dayenu Circle. We are part of Dayenu, which is a national Jewish organization that focuses on the climate crisis. Dayenu means we have had enough in Hebrew, and we have had enough of the climate change and want to stop it and reverse it, hopefully. Our group is led by Kathy Marshall. Wave to us. And she is the one who is doing the Zoom host duties tonight and all the tech stuff. So thank you, Kathy. These monthly workshops, this is one of monthly workshops that are sponsored by a number of local congregations and are part of the Climate Heroes Initiative, which is the brainchild of Donald Levitt, who is here with us. And another member, he is another member of the TBE Dayenu Circle. So now, Don, would you like to say a few words about Climate Heroes and this webinar?
Well, thank you, Ellie, and thank you all for being here. The Climate Hero story starts with a statistic and a psychological principle. The statistic is that a survey found that 56% of people in Washtenaw County, adults, never talk about climate change. And of course, if people are not talking about climate change, they won't do anything about climate change. The psychological principle is that people look to others who are similar to themselves for cues about appropriate behavior. And so we wanted to highlight people, ordinary people, who are doing things about climate change, to be role models, so to speak. So people who are not doing anything about climate change might look to them and be swayed to give it some thought. If they're on the bubble, so to speak, wondering, should I do something or not? If they see ordinary people who are doing things about climate change, maybe that will influence them. And so we got together with 8 congregations. I want to list those congregations: Temple Beth Emeth, St. Clare's, Unitarian Universalist congregation, Zion Lutheran Church, First Presbyterian Church, St. Francis, Beth Israel Congregation, and Blue Ocean Church. And we together are selecting one climate hero each month. And every 2 months, we have an ad in the Ann Arbor Observer featuring those climate heroes. And of course, they're featured on the climateherostories.com website. And as Ellie said, there are these monthly webinars, which we've had excellent attendance for. And I would just now do a shout out for on May 7th, Sunday, May 7th, we're together hosting the first annual A2 Climate Teach-In, building on the legacy of the 1965 Teach-In at the University of Michigan. In 1965, there was an issue, the Vietnam War, for which there was a lot of misinformation and a lack of aligned action. And it's the same thing with the climate crisis now. And so we are bringing together individuals and congregations and climate action organizations, local government. Chris Taylor, the mayor, will be our opening speaker, and higher education. We have a distinguished professor closing our session. So that's the background on it. And I thank you for attending. Thank you, Ellie, for giving me time to speak about it.
Yes, and thank you very much, Don. I will put in that link to Climate Hero Stories in the chat now.
Thank you.
So people can, if you click on it now, it will open your browser and you can look at it after our meeting. Thank you, Don. All right. So in organizing this workshop, we wanted to present alternatives to using a car and getting from A to B. Any kind of alternative to driving to get yourself locally to where you want to go. So today we have speakers. We have with us speakers from the RIDE, otherwise known as the Ann Arbor Area Transportation Authority, and from the city of Ann Arbor. And we will also hear testimonials from people who use alternative modes of transportation. And we will finish with a Q&A session. So without further ado, as they say, the RIDE, our transportation authority, the bus system, will be the first presenting. And let me just highlight, spotlight. Can the RIDE people raise their electronic hands, please? So you'll be at top of my screen. Like electronically in reactions. Thank you. All right, and Gretchen. And there you go. Thanks, Ken. All right, can people see those three wonderful people in big on the screen, I hope?
Yes, yes we can.
Great. So we have with us Gretchen Johnson, who is the senior project manager at the RIDE. Wave to us, Gretchen. There you go. She's senior project manager at the RIDE and has been working in the transit industry for over a decade. She has a background in engineering and urban planning and has been interested in how people move for as long as she can remember. In her work prior to coming to the RIDE, Gretchen concentrated on transit data analysis and service planning as a planning consultant for nearly 10 years. While she was working with many agencies throughout the country, primarily the East Coast, Midwest, and what she calls flyover states in the West. At the RIDE, she is part of the planning and innovation team, primarily focused on major project initiatives. Currently, her major projects are the reconstruction of the Ypsilanti Transit Center and platform expansion and redesign at the Blake Transit Center and 4th Avenue. And she'll be the main presenter today. And she's here with her colleague, Lillian Webb. Hi. She works with employers, commuters, and schools on their transportation needs through the AAATA's Community Relations Department. Lillian's primary role is the director of the Get Downtown program, which encourages people to walk, bike, or take transit to work in downtown Ann Arbor to reduce traffic congestion. Outside of the downtown area, Lillian works with employers throughout Washington County who want to help employees get to work through carpooling and van pooling. And we also have Ken Anderson. Hi, Ken. Ken is the senior transit planner for the Ann Arbor Area Transportation Authority, and he oversees planning for the fixed route bus services and bus stops program. Ken has lived in the Ann Arbor area for 25 years. Originally moved here to pursue a graduate degree in environmental justice at the University of Michigan. So these are the three wonderful people from the RIDE. And now, Gretchen, if you're ready, you can start your presentation.
Great. So they are washing our carpets like right outside my office. So hopefully if everyone can hear, but if not, if it's too loud, let me know.
We can hear you fine.
Okay.
Yes.
So I think I might actually quickly stop my video to try to present on my other screens. It's kind of causing some issues. So Hopefully this works.
Okay.
But let me know if something happens.
All right.
Oh, it hasn't loaded yet.
There you go. Perfect.
Okay.
We can see
How's
it.
that? Can
Yep.
see it?
You can see it now. Yep.
Okay, perfect. All right, thanks for sticking with me there. Yes, thank you, Ellie, for that wonderful introduction. So I'm going to be presenting about how to use public transportation and just some general information on public transportation in Ann Arbor. Here with Lillian and Ken. So I know many of you are probably very familiar with it, but just in case people aren't, I wanted to quickly go over what is the ride, what is AATA, the Ann Arbor Area Transportation Authority. So probably the most visible aspect of our service is the fixed routes. So this is a map of all of our routes, which essentially just means that it follows the same path, same set of stops, fixed times during the day, kind of same span for weekdays and weekends. So there's about 30 fixed routes right now, and all of them come on the weekdays every 15 or 30 minutes from about 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. The big exception to that rule is Route 4, which many of you have at least probably seen on Washtenaw. And that comes actually every 8 minutes, so very frequent. Let's see, it shifts every 30 minutes just after 6 p.m. So after about 7 to 11, we still do have service. It just drops to every 30 or 60 minutes. And then weekend service is kind of similar to the evening service, where many of the same routes exist. It's just that they're less frequent at 30 to 60 minutes. Route 4 is still every 30. So the map you can see on here, all the routes are differentiated by color and by a route number. So this is like a really good place to start when you're trying to get yourself familiar with how to use the fixed route bus system. We also have something called FlexRide. FlexRide is a shared shuttle service. It connects to our fixed routes, and also, so we have these two areas. The one on the east in Ypsilanti Township will connect to the downtown Ypsilanti Transit Center. The one in Pittsfield Township hits some of the major routes there, as you can see, kind of on Ellsworth. And then also goes to the Oak Valley Shopping Center, or goes close to all the shopping over there around Oak Valley. And so these are kind of similar. I don't know if anyone's kind of familiar with a lot of times these used to be called dial rides. It's very similar to that, although you can book through an app. You can still book through the telephone, but you book through an app, and we do try to make same-day service available. So kind of trying to get towards some of the newer types of service where you can call a service from your phone or from an app. One of the biggest tips I like to try to give people kind of right off the bat, as soon as they're learning, is that over time, these have changed, but right now we've kind of developed into this kind of nice categorization of our routes. So the single digit routes, 3, 4, 5, and 6, are all the routes that you can really kind of see going between downtown Ann Arbor and downtown Ypsilanti. There are typically some of our busiest routes, long routes, of course. So there's Route 3 on here on River Drive, Route 4 on Washtenaw, 5 on Packard, and 6 on Ellsworth. The 20s and 30s are now the Ann Arbor local routes, and then the 40s are Ypsilanti local routes. So they won't really, they'll stay right inside the cities, maybe hitting the edges, but well, in Ypsi, it's the Ypsi area, but so those will be more local. And then the 60s are considered connector routes, and those really won't go to the transit centers, but they help connect you to a lot of routes. And they'll also hit some of the other major stops like the Meyer on Carpenter, and the Central Campus Transit Center on U of M's campus right on North University. So, the ride is actually quite a bit more than just the fixed routes. I won't go into details on all of these, but of course we have park and rides where you can park for free and ride our service. There's van ride, which is essentially a shared, like a carpool, but we provide the vehicle. It's a really great service. And it's really popular with a lot of the hospital employees. People really dense for parking is hard to come by. Football ride, A ride, which is our door-to-door service for those who are persons with disabilities. Then grocery ride, gold ride, which are more for seniors, and those have a lot of more details, and I'm happy to answer more questions about those. Get Downtown, which Lillian is director of, and so that offers the Go Pass, which offers a very inexpensive employee pass called the Go Pass for those who work downtown. And then the D2A2, which is a service that we offer in partnership with the Southeast Michigan RTA. That takes you into downtown Detroit. And a few others that I didn't have on here. The Air Ride is still operating. It's just not technically our service anymore. It'll go to DTW, the airport, and then the Night Ride and Holiday Ride, which are kind of similar to that Flex Ride, although expanded for over holidays and late night service. So why should you ride? There's many reasons. And I know this is very focused on climate, so I wanted to kind of just touch on a few quick points about kind of the climate aspects of why you should ride. First, so since 2017, nationwide, transportation's been the largest source of carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide is the most common greenhouse gas, and transportation's been 38% of that 4.6 billion metric tons. And then if you kind of dig deeper within transportation, personal vehicles account for almost 60% of CO2 emissions. And then if you kind of go around that circle, the commercial truck and bus, which is where our buses would be, is about a quarter. And then the rest is made up of air travel, rail, things like that. So, I mean, it's a pretty big part. And so I wanted to kind of share one sort of big point of kind of the easiest way for us to be climate conscious when we're traveling. And I'm not here to tell you to give up your car or that you can't travel alone in your car. I have a car and I use it certainly, but I just wanted to kind of this is sort of one of the big points is no matter how the vehicle is powered, even electric, we achieve the greatest energy efficiency when we travel in a more travel together, travel in a more dense manner. So I wanted to quickly show this video. Hopefully it works. I think it does have sound, but if that's not coming through, that's not that important. I'll kind of narrate. So this is comparing 5 modes of transportation, all with 200 people, trying to move 200 people. And they've put the average occupancy within each mode. So for example, 1.5 people in each of those cars. And so this red line is sort of this fictional traffic light. And here they're showing how long that queuing length would be. But here next, it shows you how long it takes for each of those modes to get across, fully across that line. So you can see like pedestrians all the way on the right, bicycle, then trains or trams, then the buses, and then cars. People are always a little bit surprised by the bicycle. Of course, it is a single occupancy vehicle, but it just takes up a lot less space. It's still, though, it does take 2 minutes for the bikes. And then you can see it takes a lot longer for the cars to get across 200 people. So about 4 minutes, which is double any of the other ones, or quadruple. So that's just kind of a good illustration of how much the geometry of how we use our space matters. Okay, so I wanted to quickly take you through kind of how I ride, and hopefully that'll help you learn a little bit about how to ride yourself. So let me stop sharing for a second. Oh. There we go. Stop share. So I want to share my other screen here. Here we go. Okay, so oh, can you see this?
Yes.
Okay. So first of all, I am often, these are my kids. I'm often riding with my kids. So, and actually I wanted to take you through a trip that I often take with my son, because it's picking him up from where he goes to preschool, or they often visit the Arbor. So, so first what I tend to do is actually, because I have the kids, I really try to pre-plan my trip. Certainly if you prefer to have the ride guide or paper map, paper schedule, that all, you can still certainly do all that. We have that all available. But I like being able to use these tools online to do my planning. So with the Arboretum, it's actually better if I type in Mary Markley, because they sit outside Mary Markley. And then I am often headed towards home, and sometimes we make a stop at the grocery store, which we're fortunate enough to be pretty close. So I'm going to head to Trader Joe's. So this gives you a good, quick look at how you can plan your fixed route. So you have to make sure to hit this button up here, which is transit. Oftentimes it's kind of, just defaults to driving. And you can, often I'm not actually leaving now, I'm leaving in a little bit. So you can set this to a different time and a different day. All of the schedules are, loaded, or with, Google has our schedules. And so they'll provide all the details about how you make this trip in terms of walking to the bus stop with these blue dots, what the bus stop name is, getting on, and then it'll over here, kind of on the left side, show you how long you'll be on and how many stops you ride, and then showing you, which stop to get off at. And there's a lot of ways on the bus to make sure that you get off at the stop, but the ones I use most are making sure that I'm paying attention to the like the ticker on top of the bus, which it'll show you the stop name a little bit before the stop. Or I just I talk to the driver and say, I need to get off at Manchester. Can you make sure I get off? Our drivers are very, they're a great resource to make sure you're off. And the big thing to note there too is if you do know where you want to get off, the way to indicate that there's that you need to stop is by pulling a yellow cord on the bus close to the windows, or sometimes there's yellow and red buttons right on like the poles that you hold on to. So after I've done this, I tend to like to actually go to our maps and schedules library. So that's right on the ride.org. I just kind of like to know if I miss my trip, or oftentimes with the kids, we just didn't make it to the stop in time or things like that. So I'll try to pull up the map and schedule to take a look at that and just familiarize myself with the schedule, so I can kind of tell how long it might be till the next bus. A quick thing on here, which I can get into more later. So I know there's so many questions about all this. I'm happy to go into more of it. This is really kind of a high level look. But these are all what we call time points. And so those really are just kind of indicating the major stops. There's many more stops in between. So that's why I really advocate talking to the driver and making sure you're getting off where you need to get off. The last kind of quick thing I wanted to say is there are, apps on your phone if you have a smartphone. One of the big ones is called Transit app, but you can just use Google Maps on your phone. Both of those will give you real-time information. So they'll tell you a prediction of when the bus is going to come, but it'll also have the schedule right in the, right for you to see in the app. And you can see here, this is Transit app. You can also buy your ticket here, which I wanted to quickly touch on fares, but you can also do a mobile ticketing fare here. So to quickly kind of show you the fares, I really highly recommend you come to the website and take a look. I know that's kind of the one big barrier, a big barrier for people is figuring out how to pay. We still take cash. Regular ride is $1.50. Certainly can just, make sure you have enough to go out and back, but you can certainly just pay on the bus. But there's just so many other ways to pay, and there's also a lot of discounts. We have M-Card agreement and just tons of different passes that'll actually save you quite a bit of money. So I think that's kind of, I know that was fast, but I think that's kind of the nuts and bolts of how I ride. So let me quickly go back to
Gretchen, there is a quick question in the chat for you about something you said about the real time.
I can read that off while you pull up the sharing. It's by real time, do you mean if the bus is delayed or broke down? Google will show that.
That is such an excellent question. And Ken can step in if this is a wrong answer, but so it used to be that we really didn't have a way to update our real-time information, but recently we've gotten a system that it won't tell you that necessarily that what's happening, but it will show you if something is delayed, and we'll give you an estimate for when it will come. If a trip is not happening, I believe it will also indicate that. Ken can step in if that's wrong, if for some reason the trip doesn't. No, okay.
No, we're having some complications with the technology, so we're trying to upgrade it at this point. What you'll see if a breakdown actually happens is the trip will fall farther and farther and farther behind, and then eventually, because I do believe that we still show the vehicle numbers. So let's say it's bus 400 that breaks down, you'll see it not moving on the map or something like that, and then eventually, like bus 405 will show up. The driver will log in, and then they will take over at that point. As far as detour information and things like that, we did have that working for a little while, but the system, we had a cyber attack last year. The system hasn't been acting the same since. And so we're trying to upgrade and bring that stuff back online. So hopefully within, the next few months, detour information and stuff like that will become a little bit more accurate.
Awesome. Thank you, Ken. Any other questions with that?
There is another question in the chat. Did you mention the gold card for seniors?
Yeah, I probably glossed over it too fast. The gold card is available for seniors for a significant discount. I believe for both, I think it's over 60 for a significant discount on the bus. And all you need to do is just talk with us beforehand to make sure you have that gold card that you can show when you're boarding the bus.
Mm-hmm. Is that over 60 or 65?
65 right now, I believe.
Okay.
Oh, I thought there was a 60 to 64.
There's two separate programs. There is a 60 to 64.
Yeah.
which I believe is reduced. And then when you move up to 65 plus, it becomes free to ride the
Right.
bus.
Okay, that's what I was going to say, but I doubted myself. Yes, it's significantly reduced for 60 to 64, but then over 65 and over is free.
Thank you. And then we have a few more minutes for more questions, and then I will ask people to save other questions for the Q&A in the end. But looks like Bob has his electronic hand up. Go ahead, Bob.
I used to take the bus from the Ann Arbor Transit Center to the Detroit airport a couple times a year. I was surprised to find out that you mentioned that I guess its ownership has changed. As a rider, does it affect me in any way? I mean, do I get it a different place, different fare, different thing, or is it
No,
no difference?
no difference.
Know about it.
It's all really mostly more about funding, actually. It's so no difference to you.
Yeah,
Good, thank you. That's great.
the nerdy back end answer on that was the Michigan Department of Transportation is now fully funding that. And so the contractor that we used to initially run the service, same contractor, same name, same fares, all that stuff, same website. It's just like Gretchen said, somebody else is paying for it now. So they, they're taking the responsibility for it.
I found it very convenient, particularly also using the parking lot here in downtown Ann Arbor to park my car.
Still
Yep.
available.
Yep.
Great. Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Thank you.
All right. Well, sounds like for now, people had some questions answered. And if you have more coming up, the last part of this workshop webinar will be Q&A. So write down your questions. I know that there's lots of information on the website, as Gretchen says, and the transit app is a good information. And I had one quick question, actually. In Arbor Township, you don't serve in Arbor Township or any of the townships, right?
Well, sorry, Gretchen, if you want to, sorry, I'm monopolizing. So Gretchen, if you want to answer it, please do.
No, go ahead. You can go for it.
So Pittsfield Township, we do have an agreement with them. And so we serve most of the kind of the northern part is where the bus routes are. And the southern part is where we have the dial-a-ride style service. Ypsilanti Township is the same thing. The northern part is where the bus routes are. And then the southern part is dial-a-ride. Superior Township, we do serve kind of a little piece of the south side of it. And then Scioto Township, we serve kind of the close-in neighborhoods next to I-94, but then we run a bus all the way out on Jackson Road, all the way out to Zeeb Road. Ann Arbor Township, we've approached them many times since I've been here, and they've declined to participate up to this point. So, the way that the majority of the bus funding works is it comes from local property taxes. And so without having a source of funding to be able to help for that coming through the township, we can't really extend service out there yet.
Okay, thank you, Ken. If anybody here lives in Ann Arbor Township, you can talk to your elected official.
Yep.
Okay, Gretchen, go ahead, sorry.
No problem. I know we're short on time, so I'll try to move through this quickly. But we wanted to just talk a little bit about sort of what's next for us, because we had a huge effort in the last couple of years to create a long-range plan. And we're really excited about what's in there, and we have some big ideas for where we can go. So there we go. So it was called the Ride 2045. It's supposed to be a 25-year outlook. It's a little bit less than that because of COVID really kind of put a wrench in things. But I wanted to go over quickly what you'll see for the first part of that over the next 5 years. Of course, we thank everyone for their support in the millage last August. It was really great to see how much support we got. And that's really directly enabling all of this, what you see on the screen. So 30-minute minimum frequencies on all our daytime routes, with longer hours of operation and overnight on-demand expansion. So taking that flex ride and some of the fixed routes and really trying to figure out how best to serve for longer hours and ideally overnight. And then also the limited stop service along Washtenaw. So right now it takes probably one way, takes, not quite 45 minutes, but 38, depends on the time of day a lot. But trying to use the limited stops to really get that back down to a half-hour trip one way, or even slightly less, between downtown Ann Arbor and downtown Ypsi. So all of those are scheduled, or we're working towards implementing in 2024. And then this is actually more my part of it, is the planning and design for some of the bigger projects like transit signal priority. Actually, Ken's doing that part, but the YTC, the BTC that Ellie mentioned at the beginning, and looking at bus rapid transit, which I know is kind of a funny term, but it's essentially trying to put something like a light rail, but not, but with buses. So it's a dedicated right of way with a bus, but things like off-board fare payments, level boarding, just a really nice dedicated fast service. Right now, our plan would be to start on Washtenaw. Of course, that takes a long time to get all the planning for that done, but really, because we have that support, we're gonna get started on that right now. And integrating the fixed route with a ride. I know it's already pretty integrated, but just improving that. And also our other big initiative would be try to go towards zero emission buses. We've been learning a lot about battery electric buses, or actually hydrogen powered buses. Really just trying to do our part to help clean the air. It's nothing set in stone yet, but really trying to focus on what we can do from our part. So kind of my just last slide here is, lots of people ask how they can help, and truly, just becoming a rider is a huge thing for us. Our funding, a lot of it depends on population that we serve, but also if we can, show how our ridership and improving that's a really, great way for us to really prove how well the system is working. But we're also just, happy to have you talk to us about all our planning studies and things like that. Certainly spread the word, talk to your leader, civic leaders, neighbors, listen to them, and then also I always find learning about how transportation works, how it's funded, how transit is funded. I have a bunch of things that I could share, but I know we want to get into the other things. So I really encourage you to learn about some of those things. They're pretty fascinating. So thank you. The website's there at theride.org, our call center number to talk with us. We're happy to take more questions.
Thank you. Gretchen, Lillian, and Ken. And this is perfect ending. Listen and learn. That's what this is it. We're listening and learning. So thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, we will now switch. Let me spotlight the next speaker. Just a second. The technology. There you go. And then let's see. Suzanne, could you raise your electronic hand, please? In reactions. There you go. And your real hand. So I think I spotlighted you. Yes. So Suzanne Flowers will be our next presenter. Suzanne is a transportation planner for the city of Ann Arbor. She started this position a year ago, just over a year ago in February 2022. Suzanne worked for the Southwest Michigan Planning Commission for 10 years as a planner, and then for 8 years as a transportation planner at the Washington Area Transportation Study. She truly embraces using all transportation modes to get to her destination, but she says that all of her best stories actually come from meeting people on the bus. So there you go, the ride. Ms. Flowers loves riding her bike, hiking in the woods, in the winter to avoid the horse and deer flies, gardening, bird watching, and feeding the different types of wildlife in her backyard. And she kindly provided her contact information here that I will post in the chat. Looks like you're welcoming people reaching out to you.
Awesome. Well, thank
Yeah.
you so much for having me this evening. I will go ahead and figure out this. I believe that's it. Share. And can I just get a thumbs up to make sure you guys can see my screen? Perfect.
Yes.
All right, so Suzanne Flowers, I'm a fairly informal person. I really do truly enjoy having these kind of conversations. So thank you so much for agreeing to have me this evening. So a little bit about myself. I do work for the city of Ann Arbor, and I absolutely love it. I know that some people think that government is not a lot of fun. I have fun every day of the week. I get to work with some of the most amazing people. I do get to work with folks like Ken and Lillian and Gretchen, and that really makes everything that we do so much better and really helps us pursue the goals, the very, very ambitious goals that we do have at the city. So how do I personally travel? I think this is something that's really important, and it has really made me a much better planner throughout my career. And it varies by season. So in the fall, I love to bike. I love getting on my bike, but I do stay away from Huron at all costs. I don't feel comfortable cycling on that street. In the winter, I'll walk, take the bus, but mostly what I do is I trip chain. And so trip chaining, if you have not ever heard that term, is why I do travel the way that I do. I live outside the city. I'm actually a Scioto Township resident, so I'm very thankful for the purchase of service agreement that my township does do with the ride. I've been a real benefactor of that agreement put in place, being able to ride Route 30. I don't have dedicated parking for work. Very, very few of us have that. I'm a very, very social individual. I really like meeting people. I like seeing the city from a different perspective. And that is really how I got to know Ann Arbor. I walked, I was riding my bike into work, and I took the bus. I came from a very grid-centric area. And when I got to Ann Arbor, I got so turned around. Packard Road, I just could not figure out that street for the life of me. Somehow I went from Ann Arbor and ended up in Ypsi one day, and I now understand how that happened. But the one thing that I really truly do believe in is having transportation choice and ensuring that we have that level of choice for all of the citizens of not just Ann Arbor, but it would be nice for Washtenaw County as well. How we travel really matters. I didn't realize how car-centric sometimes we are until, you look at the numbers, and you can see, like, generally Southeast Michigan comprises about 50% of the statewide population in 7 counties. And almost 80% of our Southeast Michigan residents commute, and they commute alone. However, the one thing that I love so much is the way that Ann Arbor commutes, how we are choosing to make our decisions different. So I look at like the bike commuting from 0.3% in the region to 3.5%. 80% drove alone to 51% drove alone in Ann Arbor. That really gives us opportunities. It just gives us opportunities. As we all know, we have some very big challenges that we are facing. It's not just the transportation component, which is obviously one of the things that I'm most focused on, but it is about managing our streets. It's about equitably connecting people to places and opportunities, creating safer streets so that anyone of all ages and all abilities can get to their destination safely. And key is also, how are we going to start tackling this climate emergency? It is not, 5 years into the future, it's happening now. We need to start taking radical action. One of the ways that the city is doing that is through our transportation master plan. The two main mobility goals of that plan are centered around Vision Zero, which says that no one dies or is seriously injured in crashes on Ann Arbor streets. The central, equally important component is carbon neutrality. We want to ensure that our transportation system contributes zero emissions towards climate change by 2030. Ambitious, yes, but we all together can do it. So one of the things that people ask me a lot about is, what is the difference between kind of Vision Zero and like our traditional approach to transportation design and engineering? And I think this graphic, while it may look a little blurry, sorry about that, I think really highlights those central differences. Years ago, we thought, well, traffic deaths, that's just kind of part of transportation. We no longer accept that. We no longer accept the fact that humans are perfect. We are not. We make mistakes even when our intentions are good, that we are doing everything that we possibly can to be good travelers and transportation users. We, again, want to prevent that fatal and serious crashes by a systems approach to design, building in redundancy, and ensuring that we can save lives, because saving lives is really the most important component at the end of the day. Within our climate, our A20 plan, we really have 6 main strategies. And I'm not going to profess to be the person wholly in charge of that. I'm sure all of you are well aware of Missy Stultz and her team and the wonderful work that they are doing. But just as a reminder, they're working on electric grid renewable energy, switching our appliances and vehicles and our bus systems, improving energy efficiency in our buildings, in our homes. Again, reducing the miles that we travel, change the way that we use, reuse, and dispose of materials. And we really want to enhance the resiliency of people and place. And so what does that really mean? It means imagining our community for people. And I get a little, I do get worked up about this, because we are making a change in the way that we want to design our community. We are looking at the people that are crossing on the crosswalk as key. We want to keep them safe, and we want to make sure that they can get to their destination however they so choose to. So it's reimagining that. It's also creating a sense of place and community that we all love. Ann Arbor is an amazing community full of wonderful assets and people. And yeah, we just really want to ensure that everyone has the same sort of environment to be able to access. That sense of place really begins with how we're planning for the various transportation users. I really like this graphic as a cyclist. I never considered myself to be highly confident. And then I did a ride and learn this past summer and realized that I did not have any fear or any concern as a cyclist navigating that space. And it was the first time that I realized that I actually may be more of a highly confident cyclist than I ever thought that I would be. I always thought like, maybe I'm somewhat confident. But the vast majority of people are not. They are interested in cycling. They would like to do it, but they're a little concerned. And so this is the kind of group that I'm always thinking about as we're doing our planning efforts, programming, and project design. How are we reaching as many people as possible? And one way that we can do that is by creating a system that is high comfort, low stress, and when feasible, separated from vehicles. That is not always going to happen on every single road. There are challenges and there are constraints. But, oh, that is not the right graphic. I'm sorry, that went the wrong direction. Excuse me. But thinking about that all ages and abilities is making us put pieces in place to ensure that we are making small incremental changes over time. So the image on the left, you're probably all very familiar with. This is kind of our downtown, the DDA people-friendly street, this curbless design where we have all walk phases for pedestrians and no vehicles get to turn. When we look at a corridor like this, we can see that we're having people-focused design here, alerting motorists to someone crossing at this designated space, providing a little refuge just in case they can't make it all the way across or they need a moment, continuing their journey. We also have dedicated space for cyclists. And again, this may not make every cyclist feel safe, but it is a step towards reclaiming space away from just one traditional source of transportation to other options. How can we make a difference? Well, sorry, there's a gnat in my office. Well, I think one of the ways that we can do this is by making maybe some of those small trips, like our partners at AAA said, taking the bus. What if you want to do a little bit more active sort of transportation choice? Well, there's biking. And some things that I would ask people to consider as they're cycling. Am I comfortable riding in the street? Do I know the rules of the road? What are the speeds of the road? Does that matter to me? Is that going to make my comfort maybe a little more or less? Where can I park my bike? That is really important to know that when you get to your destination, that there's a way that you can affix maybe your e-bike or trike or long bike in an accessible, safe location. Do you have lights, a helmet, and where should I bike? So one of the ways that I started doing this, again, as I was transitioning to working in downtown Ann Arbor, was getting on the bus. I rode the bus to kind of see what my options were. What did that facility look like? And then I tried it. I have come out all the way to the park and ride lot, ridden all the way on Miller into downtown Ann Arbor. It is great coming into town, but getting out of town, it is all uphill. And let me tell you, in the summer when it is 90 degrees out, I'm glad I have that water bottle because there are not a lot of places that level out on Miller Road. But there's also, if you're not comfortable riding on this kind of a street, maybe you take Dexter and right at the split, you hop over to Washington Street where it's, on-street parking, a little bit slower, a little bit more comfortable, and just finding those spaces that you feel comfortable cycling. Walking is, we start each trip as a pedestrian, every single one of us. We never drive our vehicles or our buses all the way into our final destination. We park our bike, we may park our car, get off the bus, and then we enter into that facility. So ways that I really like doing this is I do love walking with friends. These are my colleagues, Cyrus Nahidi and Trevor Bryden. I believe this was part of the Conquer the Cold Challenge that we were walking into work together one day. And it was maybe 5 degrees out that day. It was pretty chilly, but it made it better with some friends. So a couple tips that I would just really encourage you to do is make sure that you're using the crosswalks. It's where I think that's where we anticipate and where we want to anticipate people to cross. Use the RRFB buttons when feasible. Walk on the sidewalk unless you have a reason to not walk on the sidewalk. And if there are issues, make sure you report that to us. We want to know if if the sidewalk is heaved so much that it could be a potential trip hazard. Is something broken? Is there debris? Obviously, after all of this weather that we've had over the last several weeks, walking can be a little dicey. I almost slipped and fell a couple times this week, so I totally understand that. And again, have fun with friends. I don't need to talk about public transit, but I will for a minute. I love riding the bus. I truly do. It is fantastic. I love the drivers. They are knowledgeable and helpful, always courteous. I have never encountered a driver that just didn't go the extra distance for me and so many others. It is a way that I connect with people, to share a conversation. There's a woman who I ride the bus with her on the mornings. We get to talk about her weekend. I get to share what I did. It's just a really great way to build community. I know personally that climate change it feels a little overwhelming. Like what can I personally do? Like, I'm recycling, is that enough? All right, I'm trip chaining, I'm trying to make some good decisions, but those little decisions really do add up. So thank you, Lillian, for providing me this information. As part of the Conquer the Cold Challenge, which lasted from January 10th to February 10th, the city of Ann Arbor had a team of 32 participants. We were able to reduce our greenhouse gas pounds by 4,536. We burned a total of almost 45,000 calories and walked, bike, commuted 5,137 miles. All of those little things add up, and all of us can be a part of that each day. And that is all I have for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Suzanne. I did post your contact information in the chat. Really appreciate it. Wonderful information. Now we'll just move on to actual testimonies from two people who happen to be both members of Temple Beth Emeth. And that's Annette Fish and Phil Barr. Could you raise your electronic hands and I can spotlight you? There you go. There you go. They'll be basically they're both using bikes year round, bike around in all 4 seasons. They figured this out. They also combine bus and biking for their trips. So maybe we'll start with Annette, or I don't know, I know you planned your presentation, so I was thinking that you can just share your experiences. In my mind, I would like to know, why do you do it? Like, what motivates you? What are the challenges? Traffic, weather, technical issues, anything else? And also maybe how you integrate your bike riding with using the bus, and do you ever put your bike on the bus and all that? So thank you.
I think we said I'd start, Annette, and then okay. Okay, first, I'm Phil Barr. I just wanted to say I'm not here in any professional capacity like the rest of you, so just a bike rider. I just wanted to pile on a couple of things that Suzanne said. I carpooled a lot, and people think that the reason to carpool is maybe save resources or save money, but that's really the last thing. the best thing about carpooling is you leave work on time. Because you actually have to leave, which if you're like me, you kind of are anxious to get something more done at the end of the day. So it gets you out of time. And then the people that you meet, your best friends, become the people you spend all that time with. It's just unbelievable how you get to know people in depth, spending hours with them. Then you leave work on time, you get to know people, and then you save a little money and resources. So highly recommend that for people who are commuting. And then that Ann Arbor has the bus to Detroit now. There was no way to get to Detroit when I was working at Henry Ford Hospital. Absolutely no way. I drive halfway and bicycle halfway and stuff sometimes, but it was just impossible. So it's really great. I hope people are using it. So for me, I guess, I think you can get almost anywhere in Ann Arbor in 20 minutes on a bicycle. So it makes sense for a lot of things when you just want to get there. My number one rule in bicycling is the car always wins. So there's a lot of other subtopics about clothing and visibility, but it boils down to the car always wins. So be very careful. And I got to admit, I don't always follow the traffic rules. I sometimes, if there's nobody coming, will blow through a stop sign, but I'm not going to worry about it. Who has the right of way? The car always wins. Dress appropriately. I'm not always going hunting, but bright clothes in the summer, bright clothes in the winter. Just be visible. Back to the car always wins. I dress warm. Your balaclava is your best friend. Keeps you warm, and it's very light. Your helmet fits on over it, and of course, it was mentioned water bottles and stuff like that. I got my bike here, so bright blinking lights in front. Anything that can get the driver's attention is important, and in the back, bright lights. So, and then just comfort things. Invested in a really good panniers, which are very big, can carry lots of groceries from the farmer's market, keep things dry, and there's a place to put papers or your computer in there to keep it out of the way and getting smashed by things. Other than that, there's great bike paths. They finished the bike path down to Lake Erie now. So you can get all the way down there, and you could take the Ann Arbor bus. It used to be that the last stop was in Belleville at the shopping center. You could take your bike to there and then bike down to Lake Erie, go sailing, bike back, and then get the ride home. So there are ways to do that, and that's really kind of what I wanted to say. And other than that, I bike for exercise mostly, but and then just not getting in the car. So that's it.
Thank you, Phil.
Mhm.
Emeth.
Yes, well, I don't want to disillusion you, but I must tell you, I don't bike in winter. I don't bike on wet streets. I take the bus. And I often take it in the evening, although my friends worry when I say I'm going home by bus. But if the bus is operating the later hours in the evening, I can do that. I biked when I was a kid. I stopped when I was pushing strollers. But when I went back to work full time, I had a tween and a teen at home. And as soon as I got home after a long commute, before my foot hit the floor, they'd start to complain, each about the other. And I had to get away from them. We only had one bike in the family, it belonged to my teenager. So I took her bike. Nobody could come with me. However, this bike was much lighter than the Schwinn I had ridden as a kid. And I didn't feel comfortable turning around. So I had to go around the block so I could get home. And that's how I started to bike again. I've always used my bike for transportation, although a few years ago, quite a few years ago, I went on a couple of bike tours, which are fun. But I don't do 30, 40 miles a day any longer. I biked in Pittsburgh, where I grew up and where I lived 20 years ago, and it's hilly. So it doesn't seem bad to bike here. I really started to bike more when I used to go to events on campus, because it's impossible to park downtown in the middle of the day. But with the bike, you can park anywhere. Any telephone pole will do. I remember once biking to a lecture, going to my favorite tree to lock my bike. And Bob Levy, our former rabbi, was there, and he had taken my parking place because he's a very strong biker. And I accused him of that, with humor, certainly. And as he pointed out, the tree has 2 parking places, one on each side. So we both parked there. I bike because it's easier. It's faster, it's easier. It's fortunate I live less than 2 miles from downtown. But I also live within an 8-minute walk of 3 bus routes. So I have my choice. And in the winter, it's the bus. I also think, as I retired here, that the bus system is good for the times when older people can't drive, can't walk far. So it's a great benefit. I take the air ride to the airport. I've used the bus to Detroit because every time I drive to Detroit, I get lost, terribly lost. And this is much easier. And I would say when I moved here, my then 5-year-old grandson loved buses. And when I biked down to the main office, which is perhaps a quarter of a mile from where I live, to get my senior card, he was very proud of me. So biking to me makes life easy. It feels like an antidepressant. I'm out in the fresh air and moving fast. And that's why I do it.
Great, thanks, Annette. Thank you. Well, Phil and Annette, thank you. I think you are an inspiration to us, and hopefully people will get inspired to use biking and buses and leave your car at home, and I learned even if it's an electric car. So there is a surprise for me. So let's start our Q&A session. And pretty much you can direct your questions to anybody. Raise your electronic hands. Look on the bottom where it says reactions and click on that, and the hand will go up. I do want to acknowledge or go back if this looks like for the ride contingent here. In the chat, there were questions from about half an hour ago. Patricia Anderson says, I know there are policies in place about smoking, vaping, and perfumes in the buses, I assume she means. But in my experience, these are not enforced. I have severe allergies, making this dangerous to me. Could you speak about how this is handled? If one of you, the 3 representatives could, maybe you could address that.
Yeah, Kim's gonna take that one.
Okay, I'll be happy to answer. And Patricia, if you want to add anything to that, if it's, okay, let me start. And then if you have any follow-up questions, please let us know. So on board the buses and at the transit centers, we definitely have policies in place for vaping and smoking and things like that. I don't think that there's much that we can do about, if Ken wears pretty strong cologne or anything like that. I don't think we have any authority to be able to do anything about that type of thing. But if you experience something on the bus for smoking and vaping, and if somebody's playing music too loud or they're bothering you or anything like that, please go up to the driver immediately and tell the driver about your situation. If the driver can't handle that themselves, they will call our dispatcher that's online and get a supervisor, so that if necessary, if we have to have somebody come down or talk to them over the radio, talk to that person over the radio to deal with that situation, we will take care of it. So I'm sorry to hear that you had a situation where somebody was, vaping on the bus, but definitely let the driver know. And then if that doesn't work, call the information number. It's 734-996-0400, and then file, or if the driver refuses or can't do anything. I don't like getting people in trouble, but file a report by calling that number to let them know, to let us know, so that we can investigate the incident and make sure that the driver knows in those situations that they have a responsibility to help out passengers such as yourself.
Thank you, Ken. Next question is from Cindy Kruger. I am 61, but got my half-price bus fare name tag when I turned 60. Have to fill out an application and pick up the tag at the transit service office on South Industrial. Oh, I guess it's not a question, it's a comment. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Cindy. All right. Oh, Patricia wrote, I got off the bus so I could breathe, and the bus driver left with the vaping passenger. Yeah. So, the perfume problem was with the driver.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I will pass that along. You're right. The drivers themselves are not supposed to wear particularly strong scents. So I will pass that along to our operations people so that they can do reminders and do follow-up training and things like that if necessary. So thank you for sharing that. I will definitely pass that along to our operations people.
Thank you, Ken. All right, there are some people who raised their hands, and we'll start with Edward.
Yes,
Go
thank
ahead.
you. Just one question. Gretchen, you mentioned the expansion of the Blake Center.
Yes.
Will that, I go past there quite often because I live downtown, and it's always amazed me that we have people going to the airport and we make them stand out in the rain and get nice and ready for a long plane trip by getting soaking wet, which does not seem like a big incentive. Does the expansion include something to help make it encourage people to use that service by getting people to the Blake Center and then without going out in the rain, staying under shelter, to get on a bus to get to the airport?
So that's an excellent question. One of our big push for the redesign, or not redesign, but the expansion, will be a full canopy over at least that portion of the platform. I know our existing canopy is not great. Unfortunately, we with the housing development being such that it is, they will be taking the kind of entire southern portion of the old Y lot, and we'll have the kind of the northern portion, right, abutting the existing BTC. And so the current plan is for the canopy over the full platform, the kind of the expanded platform part. However, the stops on 4th and 5th, kind of next to those housing towers, are going away essentially, at least under current plans. And so it's still likely that for the air ride, you'd have to cross over 4th to get to the bus. However, we are working with the DDA to do a full redesign of 4th Avenue and hopefully having a lot more effective bus shelters for all along 4th, both the queuing of the existing routes kind of north of our driveway. But then sort of the current thought, at least, is to put air ride on 4th, and we'd have a shelter on 4th heading south for air ride and the D2A2. So not fully covered, unfortunately, but and of course things could change. The project's still very much under development, but yeah, it's not an ideal situation, but we'll do everything we can, because I know that that's a huge issue.
Thank you, Gretchen. Bob, you're next. Go ahead.
I moved to Ann Arbor about 30 years ago from Chicago, where I was very familiar with the CTA, subway, elevated, rapid transit. Looks like Patricia is supporting of that. So I'm wondering, what are there plans for Ann Arbor to have a true rapid transit, not a bus rapid transit system between Ann Arbor and Ipsy, Ann Arbor and DTW? I mean, there's a I-94, a big open space between the east, all the different roads. Are there any plans? No, let me change it. What are the plans for a true rapid transit system between us and other communities?
Yeah, I'll start off, but then Ken probably can jump in. He might know the history a little bit better. You know, there's long been, attempts to try to do a rapid transit rail between Ann Arbor and Detroit here and Ipsy and the airport. And I mean, I don't think those are necessarily completely gone. There's no current plans for that type of rapid transit in the area. That's, I think, Southeast Michigan has had a long history of how to fund these big transit projects, and just very kind of different political climates within each county, and obviously those change so often. But so no, not a current plan. I think within Ann Arbor we are still, we're very excited about trying. I know bus rapid transit is not what a lot of people would love to see, but it does have a lot of advantages in terms of cost, and still giving a lot of the benefits of something like a light rail. I think the biggest downside would be something, if it did happen to have a lot of riders, it is hard at some point to scale up the capacity. But we are looking at things like articulated buses, so 60 foot buses instead of 40 foot, and all the amenities of a light rail, and trying to make it as smooth and a very quick process for passengers to board. But Ken, I don't know if you have anything to add about kind of rail rapid transit in the area.
So the way that I would think about this is kind of stepping stones on the way to building up a more robust transit system. There aren't very many cities in this country at all that have rail lines, except for maybe commuter rail lines that that connect to different places. So the thought behind the bus rapid transit, which Grand Rapids is pursuing or has pursued, they actually just they opened up their second BRT line last year. Lansing was pursuing, but they put it on hold. Is that, to build on what Gretchen said, is that it's basically a light rail line with all the amenities except for actually having the tracks in place. And so the thought behind that is, if you can get that mode put in place, then you build up the ridership so that later on you can, install more capital intensive and, things that are way more expensive. One of the main reasons why we can't just jump at this point directly into a rail system running around Washtenaw Ave is that if we want to use federal funding, we don't have the ridership and we don't have the population at this point in order for for our project to come out favorably for the Federal Transit Administration to put up money for it. And if we were to do it all locally, instead of talking about tens of millions of dollars, to put it in a bus rapid transit thing, you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars to do, to put some sort of light rail If you want to do something like Chicago, like the L, a heavy rail system, then you're talking tens of millions of dollars, just to do an extension. They're extending the red line farther down the Dan Ryan Expressway. I believe, if I remember correctly, that's somewhere between $750 million to $1 billion extension, and they're only going maybe a mile or two. So, it's kind of steps to build up the ridership so that we can get the funding from the federal authorities to be able to, build these systems up as we go along.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Gretchen and Ken. Stephen, go ahead.
I think I'm going to have to reduce my number of questions.
Yeah, we have 5 minutes.
Yeah, Annette and Phil, my knees went bad more than 10 years ago. Is bicycling for me?
Why not?
Bad knees?
Maybe electric. Phil and Annette, do you know much about electric bikes and the assist that you get from the electric motor? Or?
Well, there's some bikes, I understand, electric bikes that require you to pedal and then it helps you. So it's good for hills. I'm thinking about that, but I haven't got there yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the problems is having a secure space to lock it up, because if you can remove the electric motor from your bike, so can somebody else. And you don't want to pay for it and have it go to somebody else.
Mm-hmm. Does that answer anything, Stephen, for you?
It has perspective.
Sorry, somebody had wanted to
Well,
say something?
I wanted to jump in quickly because I have an electric cargo bike that I use with my kids. I would highly suggest, I don't know if you've seen HEH, the human electric hybrid store downtown. They offer, you can very safely ride around and get a feel for the bikes. And like Annette said, if there's some that have a throttle and you don't need to pedal, the others, obviously at some point then you'll use up the battery very fast if you keep the throttle, but it is very easy on your knees. Bicycles are very efficient machines.
Yeah, Stephen, they just moved from Carytown to Miller over there, Miller and Ashley, that store. So I was just there today.
Whoa. I meant to direct the question to you.
Well, type 2, there's type 1 and 3, which are pedal assist, and type 2 are the ones that have a throttle. But they are so knowledgeable over there. They'll be happy to answer your question. Thank you, Gretchen.
Mm-hmm.
All right, a few more minutes. Tim, we have time for your question.
Thank you. This is kind of similar to what Robert was saying before about rapid transit. But I think Ken and forgot who else mostly covered that. So I guess my other part of it is a lot of the presentations today were about mostly about how the bus system works and how bikes could be helpful. Is there what's the current thought or strategy on choice ridership versus kind of more captured or captive ridership? I forgot what the correct term is. Like some people rely on buses and bikes because they don't have any other choice. But in terms of the strategy to get the privileged people that do have their own cars to choose buses and bikes instead.
Yeah, that's a good. Sorry, did I cut you off?
No, yeah, I was gonna clarify, but I think you get the gist of it. So, and I think of what Robert and the discussion around rapid transit, I feel like would be part of the strategy, and maybe that's a longer term one. Because if I have a choice to hop on and zip downtown from where I am close to Arbor, in, less than 5 minutes, I'll probably choose that versus getting in the car and try to get through Washington traffic.
Right.
So Gretchen, just a minute answer, please, because we have one more announcement and then we have to wrap up. Thank you.
Okay, sure. So yeah, very quickly, I mean, I think if you look at transit, there's so many things we could do, but the number one, way that people kind of make that choice is by offering frequent, reliable service. And so with our long range plan, we're really trying to offer that, of course, comfort and safety as well. But if you can go out to that stop and quickly get on without having to really look too much at a schedule, that's sort of the number one way to make that shift. Of course, also things like pain with parking and things like that really move the needle. But on our end, we can really make the service frequent, reliable, and a long span of hours.
Thank you. So I want to thank everybody. It's 9 o'clock now. We just have a quick announcement from Kathy. If you can hang on for another minute.
Yeah, just 2 seconds. Just a reminder, everybody. Well, first of all, thank you to all our speakers. I thought your presentations were awesome. And thanks everybody for attending. Yeah, we've got 3 events coming up. We've got a workshop on April 19th on individual behavior choices and climate anxiety. We've got the teach-in that Don mentioned on May 7th, which is from 1:30 to 4 in the afternoon, all about a whole different variety of climate-related issues. And then on May 17th, we've got our final workshop of the series, and it's going to be on investing, green investing. So hopefully, we'll see you at future workshops. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being here and for making a difference for climate change. Thanks to all the wonderful presenters. Scroll through the chat before you go. There are some good tips that people were posting if you didn't have a chance. Have a good night, everybody. See you at the next event.
Thank you, Ellie.
You are very welcome.
Thank you to all the speakers.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Hi.
So, Kathy, think it went well?
Yeah.
It's good. It's good to know for the future how quickly we run out of time.
Yeah, no, I thought our speakers did a great job. You did a great job, Ellie.
Oh, well, thank you. Thanks, everybody who is still here, and have a restful rest of your evening.
And
Bye-bye.